Good morning, welcome to Nine's Morning News. This Monday, a crash emergency. Several injured as a bus slams into a car, then ploughs into a building. People inside evacuated and roads closed. A live report just ahead. Pressure intensifies for a royal commission into the Bondi attack. A scathing letter from victims' families. Progress toward peace. The US and Ukraine leaders shoulder to shoulder after high-stakes talks. Melbourne heats up, temperatures spiking and fire threats. Preparations for the 5th Ashes Test underway as talk grows of Usman Khawaja's final appearance. And tributes for a goddess of the silver screen as French film icon Brigitte Bardot dies aged 91.
This is 9 News with Stephanie Anderson.
Good morning. We'll start with that emergency just in. A bus crash in Sydney's north triggering evacuations after it crashed into a car and the side of a building. Nine's Madison Scott is live in ride for us. Maddie, significant structural damage has been done and crews say it's a miracle this bus driver survived.
Steph, it is incredible. He is still alive and he's in hospital in a stable condition. I'll just take you to behind me where this bus now is. You can see through those front doors. The bus driver was pinned to his seat where the debris from this building torpedoed through that front windscreen. He was then evacuated on the other side and rushed to the Royal North Shore Hospital. On board were 9 passengers on this bus. They have also survived and only suffered minor injuries. 3 people in total have been taken to hospital. This all happened just after 9 o'clock this morning here at a busy intersection in North Ryde. A driver of an SUV ran a red light and caused this bus to lose control. Take a listen to what some of the passengers had to say.
It was very frightening. We went inside. I thought the driver died. Like the thing just poked him right in the chest, but he survived.
The compartment where he was sitting is completely destroyed, so it's an absolute miracle that he's still alive.
Now, inside this building is a medical centre of sorts and people were here waiting for their appointments. 30 people were evacuated from the building. They described that sound as an earthquake-like sound as this bus careered into the building here. There will be a full police investigation and structural engineers will arrive shortly.
An incredibly close call. Thanks, Maddie. OK, turning now to those high-stakes talks in the US aimed at ending the war in Ukraine, with Donald Trump welcoming Volodymyr Zelensky to Mar-a-Lago. Let's go live to US correspondent Jonathan Kersley. And Jonathan, no firm agreement, but both leaders are adamant progress has been made.
That's exactly right, Stephanie. Yeah, the leaders spoke for a couple of hours behind closed doors at Mar-a-Lago. Donald Trump arriving out the front of his Florida mansion to greet the Ukrainian leader for their first face-to-face talks in a couple of months. The American president had said he wouldn't meet with Volodymyr Zelensky again unless he thought a deal was close. And that's essentially what we heard come out of this after a couple of hours, is that, yes, they are close, but they are not quite there. You can see there the level of senior officials flanking both leaders. We saw the Secretary of State on the US side as well as the Secretary of Defence as well, and Ukraine's senior officials also there as they tried to nut out and get closer to an agreement to try and find peace with Russia. This has been a 20-point peace plan that has been revised and revised and revised for months now, with the idea that somehow now, after more than 1,300 days of this conflict, it could be brought to an end. So yes, look, both leaders saying that they are close. Volodymyr Zelensky saying about 90% of the way there. Donald Trump saying about 95% of the way there. But still there are key sticking points. They are security guarantees for Ukraine that Donald Trump says that Europe is going to be heavily involved with. But there's also the issue of land. Here's what he had to say on that question as the two leaders spoke at a press conference shortly after this meeting.
What are the thorniest issues still unresolved after the?
Well, I think the land you're talking about, some of that land has been taken. Some of that land is maybe up for grabs, but it may be taken over the next period of a number of months. And are you better off making a deal now? Look, let me tell you, they have been very brave. They fought very hard and continue to fight very hard.
Now for those hopes of peace.
Yeah, well, that's the real key question next. There's going to be more talks with the US and Ukrainian officials next week. Then in a couple of weeks' time, we are expecting to see Volodymyr Zelensky and European leaders invited to the White House for another round of crucial talks. But so much of this rests on Vladimir Putin's shoulders. How much is he prepared to give up? What is he prepared to agree to in order to try and end this war? He said essentially he doesn't want a temporary ceasefire, and Donald Trump agrees with him on that issue. So clearly there needs to be ground for the Russian leader to move. Having said that, though, the reception that Donald Trump gave Volodymyr Zelensky today was very, very warm indeed. A far cry from those confrontational scenes we saw inside the Oval Office back in February of this year. In fact, it was pretty warm between the two leaders. Here's some more of what they said.
We had a really great discussions on all the topics, and we appreciate the progress that was made by American and Ukrainian teams in these recent weeks.
Well, I think look, you can say 95%, but I don't like to say percentages. I just think we're doing very well. We could be very close. There are one or two very thorny issues.
So there's thorny issues. There's the issue of a Russian president. There's plenty to work through before this peace deal can even be achieved. Stephanie?
Absolutely. Thanks, Jonathan. Well, the federal government is being warned if new homes aren't built in the right places, it could cost the country billions of dollars. Let's go live to 9 Federal Politics reporter Emily Saunders. Emily, this is all about future-proofing against climate change.
It is. Good morning, Steph. These warnings are all coming from a new report from the Productivity Commission. It says without adapting existing homes or taking climate into consideration when building new ones, climate change-related damage could cost us $744 billion by the end of the century. Annual damages reaching as high as $31 billion per year, which would be around 1% of our annual GDP. Riverine flooding is expected to cost $241 billion in damage by the end of the decade. Tropical cyclones, fires and extreme wind also all pose growing risks. But the report does go on to say taking steps now to improve how we build homes and where, while also making climate-friendly modifications to existing homes, could save us as much as $240 billion. We know climate emergencies are already putting pressure on the federal budget, the government having to spend an unexpected $6.3 billion extra this year to respond to natural disasters.
Our government's committed to taking action on climate change because we see it as a real investment, not just on reducing energy costs through more renewable energy, but of course in making sure that our communities are resilient towards the changes that are happening.
The Productivity Commission is advising homes be built in areas we know aren't high risk to disasters like flooding. And if they are in an area prone to threats, taking those extra steps to protect them could save both their owners and the country billions, Steph, in the long run.
OK, thank you, Emily. There's been a deadly crash in South Australia, a 31-year-old man dying after slamming into a tree at Sutton Town near Mount Gambier. His 3 passengers, 2 people aged in their late 20s and a 12-year-old boy, were injured and taken to hospital. Their injuries are not considered life-threatening. Well, Comanche's Sydney Hobart winning crew are this morning celebrating claiming line honours in a thrilling finish. Let's go live to Ollie Haig in Hobart. And Ollie, the victory party went well into the night.
Yeah, certainly right, Steph. Massive celebrations here in Hobart. And have a look at Comanche this morning, basking in her glory here on Constitution Dock, which is now opened up to the public so people can go have a look. And really, what a sensational race and finish it was for the Sydney to Hobart yesterday. Comanche finishing the 628 nautical mile race in 2 days, 5 hours and 3 minutes. An incredible result, and it really was a bit of a game of cat and mouse in the end. We saw 3 Supermaxis battling it out in the Derwent last night, with Law Connect behind and Scallywag behind them as well. But in the end, Comanche was just too good. Speaking with James Mayo and Matt Allen, the skippers of Comanche, they said it was all about strategy. Of course, you may remember those wild conditions that we've seen over the last couple of days. They had to have a bit of a reset once they got to the top of Tasmania. James actually said, believe this, he got 20 minutes of sleep over the 2 days. days. So just incredible, highlights the challenges that they really faced. Comanche eventually taking line honours last night, but for Comanche this was all about redemption. Last year Comanche was forced to retire because of a tear in her mainsail, so you can safe to say it was a pretty good feeling for Comanche to get over the line last night.
Last year was very frustrating, but we wanted to come back. James and I decided that we'd come back. We were only going to do it if both of us wanted to come back, and we decided to do it and do it at 100%.
The crew, they're incredible. You know, if you're going to achieve great sporting achievements, you can't do it without a fantastic team.
So, Steph, this is the first line honours win for James Mayo and Matt Allen skippering Comanche. So just an incredible result. The fifth line honours win ever for Comanche. Just another quick boat that I want to mention that had an amazing result just over there is Lucky. Now, that is an 88-foot yacht that managed to come fourth, beating another Super Maxi. So just another incredible result, really highlighting what's been an amazing 80th Sydney Hobart. Steph?
It sure has. Thank you, Ollie. OK, still ahead on Nine's Morning News, the families of those killed in the Bondi terror attack unite and pen a scathing letter to the Prime Minister. Plus, life-threatening flash flooding, the latest severe weather warnings for Queensland. And a different story in the country's south, with heat and fire putting Victoria's emergency crews on edge. You're watching Nine's Morning News. We're back after this. Back now with new developments in the Bondi terror attack. Families of victims have written a scathing letter to the Prime Minister demanding answers on how the shooting was allowed to happen. Annalise Bolt joins me now from Bondi. And Annalise, the families are calling for a royal commission.
Yes, Stefan, the Prime Minister is so far resisting those calls. 17 families of those killed or injured in the attack 2 weeks ago showing a united front, releasing a statement calling for a federal royal commission, saying the Albanese government hasn't done nearly enough since Australia's worst terror attack. I'll read you some of that statement. They say, "We demand answers and solutions. We need to know why clear warning signs were ignored, how anti-Semitic hatred and Islamic extremism were allowed to dangerously grow unchecked, and what changes must be made to protect all Australians going forward." One of those families is that of Reuven Morrison. He was killed while trying to fight off one of the attackers with a brick. We've spoken to his daughter, Shayna Gutnick, this morning. Here is some of that interview.
There have been royal commissions for banks, there have been royal commissions into aged care. We need a full probe into how this was allowed to occur.
Now, we have heard from Anita Green. She's a Queensland Labor senator, and she said that the government's focus is on urgency and action, which is why they are seeking out a federal review instead of a royal commission. But no word yet today from the Prime Minister. Steph.
OK, thank you, Annalise. And some breaking news now just in. One of the heroes of the Bondi terror attack, Ahmed Al-Ahmed, has been released from hospital. He's also sharing his story for the first time with American news network CBS.
I know I save lots of people's life, innocent kids and women and oldest and men. And I know I save lots, but I feel sorry still for the lost.
$2.5 million has been raised for Ahmed, who was filmed tackling one of the gunmen. Well, Queensland's north is bracing for more wild weather after a monster deluge smashed coastal communities overnight, threatening to cut off towns. Abby Gearan has the latest.
Well, the risk of life-threatening flash flooding will intensify between Cairns and Townsville today, with 6-hourly rainfall totals of up to 260 millimetres quite possible. Overnight at South Mission Beach, which is just south of Cairns, almost 200 millimetres was recorded in the 6 hours to 8 p.m. A severe weather warning is in place this morning for much of the state's north. The low pressure system, which is generating this wild weather, is currently sitting in Gulf country in Queensland Queensland's northwest, but it is slowly moving southeast, and that is why coastal communities need to be on high alert. There are flood warnings in place for about 20 North Queensland catchments as river levels begin to rise. Locals will of course remember the 2019 flood event. The Weather Bureau is warning this could be quite similar, and that is why SES crews have actually deployed from the southeast overnight in readiness.
This does look comparable to rainfall we had in early 2019, where we saw around 400 to 700 millimetres, particularly inland to the northeast of Mount Isa.
All this as the Weather Bureau comes under fire again today after reports a new radar promised for a 1,200 kilometre blind spot in the state's southwest won't be ready to go until 2028. It was funded by the federal government earlier this year after farmers were left in the dark during a once-in-a-generation flood event.
And Melbourne is sweltering through a hot summer day with temperatures soaring above 30 degrees in the city. Let's go live to Mark Santomartino in St Kilda. Mark, many are cooling off at the beach today.
What a terrible day to be stuck in the studio, Steph. The sun is out and Melbourne is absolutely baking after a relatively lacklustre start to our summer. We're going to head for a top of 33 degrees today here in the city. Of course, the town that's heading for the highest temperature, you guessed it, Mildura, is forecast to hit 39 degrees a little bit later today. Here at St Kilda Beach, thousands of people have been packing the sand since the very early hours of this morning. We've been watching dogs run into the water, everyone making the most of a few hot days before the start of 2026. The best bit, there are barely any warnings in place as well, with the Bureau of Meteorology keeping an eye on a couple of fire danger risks in the west and northwest of the state only.
We are monitoring some higher fire dangers across northern parts of the state, and also tomorrow as a wind change comes through. But at this stage, looks like a beautiful day, not expecting any warnings across the state.
Unfortunately, we did see a firebug light a couple of fires at Avondale Heights late last night, Steph. The fire was sparked around 6 o'clock. It got dangerously close to homes. A number of fire trucks and even helicopters needed to be brought in to bring that one under control. We've spoken to Edmund, who had the flames within about 5 metres of his house. You'll hear part of his story a little bit later in the day in our 4 o'clock and 6 o'clock news. Steph?
OK, we'll see you then. Thank you, Mark. Coming up on Nine's Morning News, a 60s icon farewelled. Brigitte Bardot remembered for her work both on and off screen. And in sport, an unconventional showdown sees Nick Kyrgios challenged by the women's world number one. You're watching Nine's Morning News. We're back after this. Australia is back in training after their loss to England in the Boxing Day test. Returning to the nets at the MCG, coach Andrew McDonald said the batting group's performance simply wasn't good enough, as speculation rises around whether the next game in Sydney will be 39-year-old Usman Khawaja's last.
I think he'll come to us if he's going to retire. There's no doubt about that. And then after this test match, we've got 8 months to the next one, so we've got a lot of time as a selection group to make that decision. So it's sort of at an odd time. If there was a series straight on the back of this, then it would be, I think, a little bit different.
Australia will travel to Sydney for the test on New Year's Eve. The Melbourne Stars have continued their unbeaten start to the Big Bash season, cruising to a dominant 9-wicket win over the Sydney Thunder. Joe Clark starred with a blistering 50 from 37 balls, while Harris Ralph laid the platform with figures of 3 for 29. It wasn't your typical warm-up for the summer of tennis. Nick Kyrgios taking on Aryna Sabalenka in a much-talked-about Battle of the Sexes exhibition in Dubai. The Aussie won in straight sets, 6-3, 6-3, but admitted the women's world number one pushed him hard throughout the match.
The gap between us is not much at all. You know, she was right there. The second set was in her grasp. So I'm just super excited for whatever comes next after this.
I just try to show my best tennis, and I try to bring that fight spirit that I have, and I hope that they enjoyed watching us.
Kyrgios will head home for the Brisbane International before hoping to complete a long-awaited comeback to the Australian Open. Well, Melbourne City has been stunned at home, with Perth Glory claiming its first A-League win at Amy Park in 4 years after upsetting the defending champions 3-1. Welsh striker Tom Lawrence sealed the victory almost single-handedly, scoring his first A-League hat-trick. The win moves Perth level on points with City in 6th spot. Well, French film star, fashion icon and animal rights activist Brigitte Bardot has died at the age of 91. As Europe correspondent Josh Bavis reports, she's been described as a legend of the century.
Well, some press have described Brigitte Bardot as an actress who blew away the cinematic cobwebs of the 1950s to go on to be a style icon in the 1960s and the years that followed. It was really the way that she portrayed women on screen that cemented her place on the international stage. She was bold and unapologetic. It was in the 1970s that Brigitte Bardot walked away from the entertainment industry to pursue her other life's work as an animal rights activist, for which she is also being remembered today.
I think she'll be remembered for her kindness and for her contribution to animal welfare and animal rights. I think that's the thing that she will most be remembered for, and that's the thing I think that she wanted to be remembered for.
In the early 2000s, she sparked controversy over some comments she made around immigration and culture. But today, her fans have been placing flowers at a memorial near her home in Saint-Tropez in France, remembering her as an icon of a generation.
Stay with us, your weather details are next as we take a look at Adelaide. To the weather details now, and around the country today, Brisbane partly cloudy with a top of 29 degrees, Sydney 25 with some cloud around, sunny for Melbourne reaching 33, a fine day for Adelaide 38 degrees, and in Perth clear skies and a top of 31 degrees. And that's Nine's morning news for your Monday. We'll be back at 4 p.m. with your afternoon news. I'm Stephanie Anderson. Thanks for your company.